welcome to the first Dr. Disrupt. Just to sort of give you a little bit of a background to why we're all sat here tonight. As part of the Morning Startup, so for those of you who like Morning Startup, an event that happens every 2 weeks here in Space Cubed, it's kind of the entrance statement into the WA startup scene. So I heavily recommend that you come down and visit us. So every fortnight we have a presenter who will pitch essentially some good news stories, maybe an exit, maybe a venture capitalist will come in. We'll also have a few failures to share their stories, so some learnings. We'll also have people, for example, growth hacking or social media experts come in and share their knowledge. If you'd like to see, there's a couple down the front here. So the purpose of this event is to kind of join the gap, and it's our proof of concept, it's our MVP, it's to see if we can bridge the gap between big corporates and like yourselves, who are grassroots innovators and startups. And so we don't really know how this is going to go. The startup is good so far, I guess. We did have 130 people RSVP, and hopefully there'll be a few more stragglers come in. But every month we look to have a different Dr. Disrupt, and we're also going to have to breed some new startups here. So you've probably seen the dots on your name badges, and the purpose of that is for, in the networking part of this event, is for you to meet with different people and hopefully, maybe potentially meet your co-founder, meet the tech person and help make your idea real, or maybe if you are the tech person, speak to somebody who's got those business expertise to bring it to life. So I won't talk anymore. The one thing I do have to say, big special thanks to Beecham Group. They're kind guys. They sponsor us at Morning Startup, and they're the guys who provide the food, which we'll put on halfway through, and the beers that you're drinking. So big special thanks to those guys. And I should say the formalities. Bathrooms are at the back there, and we are recording it. So if you don't want to be recorded, let us know, and we will make you all those little fuzzy faces as you move through. So, as I said, we will have every single month a celebrity, we'll call him a celebrity from the local startup scene, Dr. Disrupt. The gentleman we have tonight is well known. I'm going to big him up as much as I can. Well known as the founder of Atomic Sky. I'd like to welcome to the stage Andy Lamb.
Stand up. I knew it. I knew it. All right, thank you. This is a privilege, shall I say, to be the first. As some of you know, I'm passionate about the startup ecosystem and innovation in Western Australia. So this for me was a no-brainer when Dave and Sam asked me if I wanted to get involved. I think it's been a massive week around innovation in Western Australia, especially with what we've got on with the West Tech Fest as well. So how many people have been through something at the West Tech Fest? Anyone? Anyone not know what the West Tech Fest was? Oh, cool. Got some people to look out for it for next year. So the West Tech Fest is a culmination that started a few years ago because a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and investor called Bill Tai, who happened to be a kite surfer. For those that you know, that kite surfing is one of the best places in the world is to do it in WA. So he was down here. He knew another president of the Silicon Valley Bank, Larry Lopez, who does a lot of work at Curtin. They came up with this idea of how they could all come kite surfing every year. So we get to gain from that, and there's a whole gamut of things that have happened. It keeps getting better and better every year. It's been fantastic this year because it's not really just about apps anymore, it's about real businesses that are using technology to solve real problems. And the 5 finalists were all in that space. They weren't just another restaurant finding app or a way to hook up with someone with a specific, fetish or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with those, right? Especially if you happen to be an investor and you go, I can ride the wave. So, that was on Monday. OzApps was on. There was also the awards. There was a student innovation pitching session as well. There was a demo day for Unearthed, which was a showcase of what they all brought together. What else was there? There was the West Tech Assemblage last night, about 400 people, startup people in suits. And and a few that didn't turn up in suits, but that was all right. I missed it, so that was all good. And then, I'm trying to think what there is tomorrow. What day is it today? Wednesday? Wednesday, yeah, it's finished today, so that's it. So at the beginning of the week as well, the federal government announced the $1.1 billion investment, which is fantastic. There are areas of it that had to be done, so that was like feeding into CSIRO and deep research again as well. So that kind of props up that end. There's a few things in there for angel investors as well. You can get a tax write-off on investment. Unfortunately, it's capped at $200,000, but hopefully in the years to come that'll actually go. And we should start to see more investment start to come into the ecosystem. So one of the things that we're passionate about as well is connecting real-world problems, so the big end of town, into the ecosystem. There's a lot of people that are sitting here today, right? So one of the hardest things is you've got to find someone that's got a real business problem to actually work with and tap into. So when Dave, sitting in the chicken coop, and Sam, where if he's still on the front door, said, would you like to get involved in this with Synergy? It was a great opportunity. And so this is the one and only, the very first Dr. Disrupt. How am I going for time? Great. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, so Steph Unwin, I'm going to introduce. Just keep going like that. Just tell me if I'm right? Steph, I met Steph probably 12 months ago, 9 months ago, with PwC. They did a thing called the PwC Digital Challenge. Synergy put some data up. They've got a whole bunch of students to actually start to connect and analyse that data as well. So that was really part of their journey around their innovation and startup culture as well. So this is the next follow-on bit. So Steph is going to introduce herself. You've had half a glass of white wine, so you'll be right. And then Steph and the team, or are you going to do it? Right. Someone's going to talk to you about a bunch of problems that Synergy is facing at the moment, some challenges, and talk you through those. And then what we'll do is we'll do a bit of panel facilitation. I'll try and keep some people on time, which, yes. And then we'll break at half time, have a networking session, and then you can actually start to work with the people that are here from Synergy as well and start to ask them about what's going on and hopefully find potentially a co-founder as well where you might want to work with. And then the facilitation to get that back in, there's some stuff at the end to actually say how you can connect and how you can start to work with Synergy as well. So we're not going to give you Steph's email address, unless you buy me a drink. And we'll go from there. Cool, all right, so without further ado, I'd like to bring up Steph Unwin.
Excellent.
All right, you can go through.
You were sitting down. They told me this platform was for me, but it's actually for the Dr. Disrupt.
Yeah,
there we go. But I've got my heels on, so I'm taller than I'm willing. Okay, so my name's Stephanie. I'm currently the CTO of Synergy, which is a Chief Transformation Officer. I'm normally their General Manager Commercial, and as part of that, deal with all of the strategy for Synergy, as well as innovation, amongst other things. So we've been on a bit of a journey, and when you guys talk about things like failed enterprises, you might actually put Synergy in that bucket, and many of you might not know why, and I'll probably tell you in a minute why we've got our own failures and what we're trying to do about it, and therefore why we've got a lot of problems that maybe some of you guys can help us with. So, Synergy. We are in the electricity space, and electricity is a relatively simple concept, but you can't see it. And it runs across a value chain, and we play in certain parts of it. So we play in the generation space. We've got a portfolio of fleet, and we range from coal-fired power stations all the way through to, we were the first utility-scale solar farm to be built in WA, in fact in the Southern Hemisphere, and we've got wind farms as well as peakers, so we can deal with the different fluctuations on the system. We're not in transmission and distribution, so T&D as it's called is Western Power. That is not us. So coal top fires, not us. In the wholesale part of our business, that's where we do our trading. So that's where we connect instantaneously supply and demand to meet a load. And that's quite typically in the past has been quite a I guess, matching dispatch, so economic dispatch, but it's becoming more and more volatile, and we hope it becomes more and more volatile because volatility means risk. Risk means products, and products maybe give us something in the future that we can devise and sell. The residential part of our business is all of us in this room, so we are all customers of Synergy. In fact, today you have no choice but to take your electricity from Synergy if you're in the residential market. That's opening up though, so in a couple of years the government has foreshadowed that we'll be opening that up to competition. And that's why, amongst other reasons, our business will be subject to a great deal of disruption. So the other part of our business that will be subject, and already is, to a lot of disruption is because of solar PV. So on the rooftops, and some of you here may well have PV on your rooftops, we've got 170,000 already of our customers. We have about 1 million customers, in terms of us, who already have PV on their rooftops. And that means that we're not the only generators in the market anymore. So any of you guys who are generating yourselves are in competition to us. And in fact, if I add up the amount of megawatts, as we call it, that sit across rooftops, it's bigger than any coal-fired power station we have on the system. So there's 450 megawatts, give or take, that sit on the system in a distributed way across our rooftops. And trying to deal with that as a business was really interesting, because it means that instead of what we used to do, which is pump power out to you guys, you're now pumping it back to us, and we've got to work out how to deal with it. So, disruption. We're almost in this Kodak world, so you guys probably all hear about things like this Kodak moment, where your business as you know it is becoming irrelevant. That's the kind of thing that we're experiencing at the moment because of these PVs and what will become battery storage and the ability for people to go completely off-grid. Our competitors, so Alinta is one of our competitors, is already talking about offering a product in that space that has PV plus battery, probably with a backup generator with a bit of gas. That would mean you don't need T&D at all. So disruption is massive for us. And there's also disruption that is caused by things up in the generation part of the business as well. So disruption caused by environmental changes. So disruption caused by regulation. So this industry is heavily regulated. And it's heavily regulated from an environmental perspective with, say, coal. So coal produces emissions, and we're now looking to curb our emissions around the world. So disruption for us is unparalleled, and is probably our single biggest business risk. So new technology, as we said, taking control of their own needs. And what does that mean in the future? The grid may still be important to you, depending on whether you want to use it to make more money. So if you've got excess that you've got from generating yourselves, you might want to sell that back into some sort of management system. What could that look like? When we talk about big data as well, we're trying to understand what big data means to us, but also to our new competitors. So the race is on in our industry to understand customers and their needs now, today, and in the future. And big data is all about getting insights. But insights are all across that value chain. So you guys have been talking about Silicon Valley and the cool dudes in Silicon Valley. I was lucky enough to go to Silicon Valley about 3 or 4 weeks ago and met a number of people in this space doing very cool things with big data. One of the companies that I met, C3 Energy, is really looking at using things like 3 trillion rows of data across all of the systems you have, plus Google, so weather, anything you can get, social media, to then give us insights into our business, if we chose to do it, across that whole value chain. So in terms of if you were in generation, having sensors on all your equipment to work out where you might maintain things and where things might fail. But interestingly, all the way down to in the residential space, they were telling me, they can work out that in this apartment block in Rome, this person is stealing energy by configuring their meters to run backwards. I thought that only happened in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but apparently it happens in Rome in apartments. And it's a huge issue for Enel, so they lose millions and millions of dollars in revenue because people are stealing data. So big data and using it to gain insights into our business is something we need to understand. And we're pretty, I guess, at the basic level in that space. Market evolution. So our market is evolving pretty rapidly, and the game is changing on us in a dramatic way every day. So when I said competition is coming, for us, what we've seen around the world, that when you open up the franchise or the residential market that we're all in, typically, and I'll use NL again as an example, they lost 60% market share. So it happened over about 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, 7 years. What will happen to us? That means the 1 million customers we have today could go as low as 400,000 customers. And so the race is on for us to use technology, insights into our customers by looking at big data to then work out how this market's going to evolve and where we can play in it. Okay, so that's a bit about synergy and some of the things we've got. And then I'll get into more broadly, why does this industry perform so badly? You might not even know that it's this bad, but across the world, the electricity industry is the second worst. Only one that is worse is railroads to be in. So the only good news for us is that we're not in railroads. But the opportunity for us is in things like system software. So you can see all the kind of cool stuff you guys probably do is at that top end of what we call the electricity or the industry cost curve. But the profits for us, without knowing how to break into that world, are very, very low. And there are issues that the whole industry across the world is facing. So, that doesn't look very good, but what have we done to deal with it? So, cost cutting, massive. So the reason I'm in transformation is to look at opportunities to really pare back our costs. You guys might not know that you subsidise Synergy every day, taxpayers' dollars, to the tune of over $1 billion over a sort of a 4-year period. So it's about $1.2 billion over 4 years. And that's because at the moment, the government does not allow us to charge the full cost of serving you with electricity. So as a result, we need to look very, very hard at our own operations for opportunities to cut our costs and increase revenue. At the same time, we need to be, taking capacity out of the system. We've got a huge amount of oversupply. So at the moment, we have what's called a peak load, and our peak load is the thing that determines how many plants are put on the system and how much is paid for in the regulatory space. And at the moment, we've probably got about a third of our plant that isn't needed on most days, and almost all of our plant, at times, is displaced by things like PV. So in the middle of the day, PV is actually getting to a point where it can meet a fair proportion of the daytime load. In maybe 5 or 6 years, it might be able to meet the whole lot. So we need to think about, should we be looking at our plant in a different way? Can it be configured to run in a different way? We've got a lot of coal-fired power. It's designed, those power plants are designed to run 24/7. They don't need to run like that anymore because we just don't need that sort of plant for the base load that we have on the system. So across the world, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of plants shut, and you've probably heard recently how many coal-fired power stations are being shut for environmental reasons as well. At the same time in India, they're about to open 450 new coal-fired power stations. But new regulatory issues are the same across the world. Our market, despite being an island, so we're not connected into the eastern seaboard, has very similar regulatory issues around the world about how you pay for plants being available, which we call capacity payments. So big changes afoot in that space, but the stuff you'll probably know about is in carbon. Is it in Australia, is it not? What are we going to do about that going forward? And things like opening ourselves up for competition. So they're really interesting things for us. But probably the fun part for us is new growth. So the reason that we want to connect with the startup community and think about innovation, where are those new markets that we can tap into? And how can we use insights like data to give us insights into customers' behaviour of the future to design products and to provide energy management services to meet their needs? So around the world, utilities are doing those 4 things to meet their needs. And the stuff that we're probably interested in talking with you guys about is in that new growth space, but also dealing with our current capacity issues. Okay, so the SWIS, as we're called, this is the Southwest Interconnected System. So down this little corner of WA is the SWIS, and that's the market that we play in. It's really unattractive for us because you guys are all charged 25.4 cents a kilowatt hour for energy, but it costs us 29.4 cents to supply you. And a big part of that is that little blob there where the 25.4 is around it, called capacity. So because all of us consume our power at different times of the day, so when you get home like now, you might put on your air conditioner, maybe do a load of washing, put on the TV, run the pool filter. we're actually quite expensive as a group to serve. And so that's why the Swiss for us is quite expensive. And those cost-reflective tariffs we don't have right now mean that we make a loss every year that we all subsidise through the government. So we're going to need, if we can't find other ways to get rid of that difference, we need the government to continue to subsidise us. What I really like, this is one of my favourite slides, and I use it all the time to sort of show the synergy of the future and maybe give you guys some insights about where we'd like to play. So up on this right-hand side of the grid, we talk about baseline consumption, and that's the consumption we all draw today from the grid if you've not done anything else but just connected to Western Power and through that to Synergy. If you mess with your lighting, so say you change to LEDs and you think about sort of heating options, you could reduce your reliance on the grid by about 40%. If you then think about your building fabrics, so insulation and smarter, more energy efficient building fabrics, maybe another close to 20% take off your reliance from the grid. If you start getting into smart appliances, so appliances and electronics that use a much less amount of energy, another 7 off that. And then if you then think about applications of those, so this Internet of Things idea, could then take another 1% off that. That would make the home of the future only need to take energy at about 35% of its current needs. And so for us, that is our business, our traditional business model, disappearing. If we then add solar and batteries, we're down to 10% of the grid that we currently would use. And that for us is what we call this death spiral as well, where people are more and more incentivised to get off the grid. Mostly because also the prices of the grid are expensive to maintain, but you're quite highly incentivised there to get off the grid. And that for us is our whole business model disappearing. So that's our revenue stream gone. But the opportunity that I see is that Synergy wants to play in all of those spaces. So in the future, we want to be your choice if you want heating and lighting products. If you want new building fabrics and advisory around it. If you want to have advice on energy efficient appliances, and maybe we can sell that to you too. And we'd actually really like to think about smart applications and tapping into this Internet of Things, this home management. Really soon we're going to start offering PV. So come early next year, our retail area is now going to be offering solar PV to all of us. And we're looking already at battery products. So batteries today, not in the money, for the average user. Won't take long. So the Tesla, I went to Tesla when I was in Silicon Valley. Amazing place actually. So when you see that car without the surrounds on it, it looks just like a mini motor. It's like this flat battery, just like this, flat with kind of a stick that you do this to drive with. Amazingly, that weekend they sent out a software upgrade that meant you didn't even need to do this because it's now driverless just by sending out an upgrade. It just blew my mind. But those batteries, even though they're expensive today, the race is on in Silicon Valley. There's plenty of competitors out there for a battery that is economic for all of us today, or very soon. And it won't be long before the prices come down. So to give you a sense, that Powerwall, $10,000, that came down from $20,000 just by that announcement. So in that sort of very short period of time, the price of batteries halved. What's it going to do in 1 or 2 years? When we're all starting to think about it, like we think about my iWatch, which I forgot to put on today. So that's the energy of the future and what the house of the future could look like. And that's kind of curtains for our business. Unless people like you come up with some clever ideas and we can work together to work out how we can play in this space in a really smart way. I guess my other observation from being in Silicon Valley, I'll get to our problems in there. There's so many people doing really cool stuff there, and there's a lot of money in Silicon Valley as well. I was actually amazed at how much money there is. But electronic vehicles are everywhere. So every place I went to visit, so I went to Google, went to Nest, went to Tesla, they're everywhere. So EVs you don't see much in WA, they're in every car park. And there are incentives, the government incentives for you to buy things like that in Silicon Valley. It's about 50 grand to buy a Tesla there. So it's 70 the rack price, but you get a $10,000 credit from the state of California and another $10,000 credit from, I guess, the broader USA. So $50,000 to get a Tesla, and you get to drive in the fast lane because it doesn't emit emissions. So you get a white sticker, so everyone wants it in the fast lane as heading down to Palo Alto. Okay, so how's my time going? Got 3 problems to talk about. Thumbs up I got, which is probably out. Anyway, 3 problems to talk about. My resident expert on generation is Andy Wearmouth, guy in the pink shirt down the front. So I'm going to get probably this very wrong, and he's the guy to ask because there's nothing he doesn't know, in fact, about anything. He's a genius. But anyway, one of our issues at Collie is that we have a high sand and moisture content in our coal, and it causes a few problems when we're going through our mills and then into thermal generation. So it takes away the thermal efficiency. It means that we get less output because of the sand, but also high moisture content. So I was down at Newja on Friday. The coal was self-combusting, so hot coal, as they call it. Problem for us is hot coal on rubber-lined conveyors equals operational downtime. So what can we do with things like high sand content and high moisture content to take it out of our coal and therefore get better outcomes for not only the coal conveyors, but the mills, which are degraded much faster than they would otherwise be. The sand is hits the mills, but also in terms of what we produce. So that's problem number 1, and Andy is the man on the panel to speak to about that. Problem number 2, and we've got Clem and John to represent wholesale for any of the tough questions ones I can't answer. We're essentially looking to instantaneously manage our supply and our demand through our wholesale business unit. And to do that, we have some peaky days, so top 5 peaky days, and then we also have an average load curve across the year. They're very, very different, as you can see. Our question for you all is what kind of big data sources would we be looking at to help us optimally dispatch and meet the requirements of the load? Now, if we can predict the weather, for example, we'll be much more optimally dispatched than we are without knowing how to predict the weather. So what opportunities are there? And then in retail, we've got Louisa down the front, who is part of our new products and services part of the business as well. Doing some really, like I said, really cool stuff in PV. It's cool for us because we're new to it, probably not cool for the rest of the world, but we will soon be cool in things like batteries. But our other issue is about understanding our consumption profiles. At the moment, we don't have really good interval meters, and smart meters, which is another beast altogether, are very expensive to deploy. And kind of a question I've got is, could we even leapfrog smart meters? What is the way that we can get intelligence about our customers' consumption profiles without having to invest so heavily? The difference between those peaky customers that I said we all are and non-peaky customers is the difference between losing about $200 million per annum to us. So it's a pretty expensive problem. Okay, so those are the 3 problems that we have. Am I good for time?
You're perfect.
Am I
We're on
perfect?
time.
Fantastic.
Go
And
on,
I've
what's
got
that? Those who have been to Morning Startup know how we do panel sessions.
Right,
So, our panellists, if you would mind coming up and taking your seats.
John's on the panel.
John's on there.
So John, if you get stuck, you can phone a friend. Get up there.
Let's go to the disruptor chair, because he's going to be like Dr. Phil.
Mate, that is so far off the mark. We don't need any more. I don't need that. So welcome panellists. Now I've got to make this up along the way. So one of the things that I was, to kick things off was, having spent 10 years in Melbourne, is it was news to me that Synergy was a whole government department. Right, so is everyone aware of that? So even though they're called something cool like Synergy, they're not just the Department of Power?
We are a government trading enterprise.
Same thing, right. So for me it was really interesting when, not really knowing that much about it, but when the chairman came out this week and said, anyone that's got PVs needs to pay more to go on the grid, right? Which I think is a really interesting strategy around trying to get some things moving. But I'd be interested to hear probably from you, Steph, as the CTO, as to how that kind of fits with your problems and why that messaging is actually, really starting to drive some people to think differently in this space.
It's a really interesting conundrum because we want to be in the PV space, so we want to self-disrupt And we've taken the view that we have to cannibalise our own business in many respects by doing it. But the reason our chairman came out this week and said you should pay fairly for PV is because at the moment everyone who doesn't have PV effectively subsidises those that do through the way that we make a payment back to Western Power. It's quite complex, but at the end of the day, we have this thing called a variable and a fixed tariff, and at the moment it's weighted about 80% to your variable use and 20% to a fixed use. So the more that you have sitting on the grid, the less people you have on the grid, the more they have to pay because the fixed charge isn't covering the true cost of it. And the problem, the last man standing is the issue here. If every one of us disconnect from the grid and only Clem's left connected, he's effectively paying for the entire grid through this payment. And that's not fair. So I think our chairman's saying that if you've got PV on your rooftop, you need to actually pay a relevant amount to also have access to the grid or recognise that that infrastructure is something we pay for as a society.
Okay, Steph, is it worth just picking up on a little comment? Doctor? The chairman...
You may call me doctor, that's okay tonight.
The chairman didn't actually say that the PV people would pay more. What he said was you need to fix the difference between fixed and variable components. And that says that, just a little customer survey here, on your power bill, who knows how much you pay if you were daily supply charge here in WA? Actually, that's better than I normally get. The answer is 45 cents a day it costs you to have your power on. If you lived in Queensland, you'd be paying $1.25. That's how much out of whack we are here in WA. Right? So there's the starting point. This isn't about doing something radical here. We are actually well behind where the East Coast is even. So what it's saying is that you, as a punter, there's this big cross-subsidy between assuming you'll consume kilowatt hours and we make enough revenue out of that to shift some of those over to the fixed costs that you saw on that bar graph. That's all broken. Because if you've got PV, you're not actually taking energy off the network. You still need the network to make your PV and everything work, but you're not making a contribution to those fixed costs. And that's all he was saying, is that you can't continue in that space. The media on one end have picked it up, that's a tax on solar. Well, it's bollocks. What it actually is just simply reweighting between recognising the fixed costs. And if you guys are trying to run a business, you know what your fixed costs are. You know, if you hire an office, it's a fixed cost, you can't turn it on and off. But you know, that's what it is. It's the reweighting between fixed and variable costs. That's what's up.
Cool. So just on that, Andy, seeing as I overheard something before, you've got the virtual microphone. Something that Steph had in the presentation was about interval meters.
Yep.
So what's the difference? So people that are looking and thinking about data, potential data solutions, what's the difference between an interval meter and a smart meter?
Okay. Right at the moment, the meter that pretty much everyone's got on the house. If you've got PV, you've got an interval meter, even though we might not be using it. But the reality is an interval meter says it measures how much energy you consume every half hour. When the little meter reader comes around your house and downloads the data, he can actually get that data. But right at the moment, we actually really don't do much with that, because if you've got PV, all we're interested in is have you drawn energy off the network, or have you supplied it to Synergy, in which case under the REV scheme or whatever scheme you're on, we pay you some money for what you've sent back. But we don't actually really use that data, in fact we don't even get the data, at that half-hourly interval, so we don't know what your consumptive behaviour is. So that's the first little piece of useful information. But if you started then talk, people throw around the term smart meter. A smart meter is something completely different. Because what a smart meter does is it lets you start doing what we call demand-side management. In other words, if we said, well, we'll give you a discount on your hot days when you want to run your aircon flat out in the afternoon, if you'll let us cycle the aircon. And there was some work that Western Power did, for example, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, when they tried to actually, they would actually take control of your air conditioner. They used to take it off, turn it off effectively for 5 minutes in 20, which means you didn't really notice. But the difference that made to that peak that Steph showed you for the summer peak was actually quite significant. So there's a whole chunk of money that's worth something to us, you wouldn't even notice, and hence you do a deal around what you end up paying for your power. So that's the difference between it. We've got very basic metering on most people's houses that just aggregate over a month. You've then got an interval meter that will let you get some half-hour granularity of your consumptive behaviour, right? When you come home, you turn everything on, you set the dishwasher to run through the night rather than the evening peak. What do you do? That's all nice. And then you've got smart meters that actually let you start doing things like controlling peak loads and things like that. So they're different critters, but people just chuck the terms around pretty easily.
Anyone? Hey, there we go. Got started now.
What is the cost of a smart meter and interval meter to install, like, roughly?
They're generally a single phase meter is about $150, $160, and a three phase is about $250. So in the sense that they're not actually very expensive to install as such. The challenge comes how you make them communicating and can transmit that data back, and there's some more additional cost around that.
The other little nasty that's around there is a lot of Perth housing stock's fairly old. Whether or not you know it, if you've got inside your meter panel in your house, if it's a good old-fashioned one that looks sort of like really dense black material, it's asbestos containing. So if you actually then have to have your spark, you either drill holes in your meter panel or take the meter panel out and put a new one in. If your house is 40 or 50 years old, you've got all this wiring behind it, and when you move it all goes, sort of starts to fall apart. You know, it was all fine until you moved it. You know, that was the experience in Victoria when they started to roll them out, but some of those costs got out of hand. Meters the least of your troubles.
What do you reckon the actual real cost is to actually operate
The real cost of installing a meter plus comms enabling the meter itself. Look, it's probably, I think when we were working on the feasibility of a mass rollout, you're looking at about 30% of the cost being your hardware and installation, and the remainder of that cost going to be your operating costs around that. So, you know, in one sense, your upfront cost is actually the lesser cost, and then you've got your greater challenges around how you create the communications network. You can do that on a mass scale, which is cheaper on a per person basis, but outlays a significant cost to do your mass communications network. Or you can do it on an individual scale using a 3G network or something, which takes an individual cost to a customer that doesn't require a mass network, but generally is still a higher cost than doing it on a mass. So you've kind of got that tension between, do you want to do a mass rollout? Do you want customers to pay for it individually? And who pays for that? Is it the customer? Is it government? Is it private enterprise? Those types of things become a challenge.
Okay, Adam.
Probably two things I'm curious with. Outside of creating big data projects and all the fancy stuff, would it not make sense as a company just to change the disparity between the fixed price and the variable price? And second of all, identify the peaky customers and charge them accordingly for it. And if over a period of time you identify, well, this particular sub-region is very peaky, well, they're the ones we execute meters in to allow us to charge a surcharge. And that surcharge is enough that economically people make smarter decisions.
Yeah, I suppose. And you've got the tie on.
Yeah, thanks. So I had a meeting today, and I realised this is not business disruption. Really good question. I think aggregating that data to work out is so individual. You know, your next door neighbour can be really busy, and you might not be. Looking at suburbs per se, we haven't found a suburb that we just pick, I guess. But that's point one. The other point is changing the tariff structure from fixed to variable. That is a huge challenge for the government, and so that's a very different, very hard argument for us to make. It's the same argument that Solar PV that Stephanie and you talked about, that pay what's fair, but communicating that to all of us is a bit of a challenge if the next bill is going to go up or it might go up. So that's one of the things that we think tariff reform is required, and it's a huge part of the transformation that Stephanie's running, we're all part of. You've got the government, takes a little while to get there, so it's not a overnight good work, but we are certainly focused on it.
John, on that note, did the Premier the other day say he had some appetite in this space?
I think so. So I think that ultimately, just to give maybe a sense of the politics, so the tariffs were held constant for 10 years in WA, and then we're going to visit about 70-80%. So it's been a big whack over the last 4 or 5 years. So for the government to push them up again is a challenge for the government. So they are keen to get to the point where customers we have to push your pay what's there, and you should think to yourself, well, should that money be elsewhere. So the Premier is supportive, but I think it will take a little while.
But there is actually a little perverse analogy that I also like to use in this space. There's not too many people probably in this room that would get a 60-day power bill from us with more than 300 bills. Not too many. $300, 60 days, right? Most people, that's a reasonable size power bill. But you're quite happy to come in, walking past into the office in the morning and pick up a paper cup full of coffee and hand over $5 to the local man to give you a paper cup full of coffee and pay $5 for it. $5 has just bought your complete day's electricity needs for your house, but somehow people resent that. It's actually just a little bit of an interesting analogy that I use.
Ash?
I have got a question to you, Steph. On the slide of smart home, you saw, you displayed a graph saying that Synergy is planning to go into the sort of consulting kind of thing, how to improve the efficiency of power, usage of power. So all those 39 like smart applications. Isn't that counterintuitive to the Synergy's goal to sell more power? So your customer may not be very confident to take consultancy from you. Are they really doing the right job? Because they want to sell more power. So how does that work out?
It's one of, it becomes we have to self-cannibalise. That's what I mean.
But no, how customer will trust you?
Well, it's in the sense that yeah, we can be charming. I think we've got a duty, and I think it's around Australia. I think with every energy retailer to actually offer trusted advice on energy efficiency. So is it actually mandated, Louisa? I thought we had some energy efficiency mandate in terms of providing information to our customers around these issues.
Yeah, certainly in the small use space.
Small use space.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of saying that as a customer, you are valuable to us over your whole life cycle as a customer. Some of that will be around traditional grid-based electricity that we're happy to supply you with, but we'd also like to think about other things that you might want for your energy solutions, and we'd like to be in that space. In time, that may be well worth a lot more to us than the old grid-based supply of electricity. And so we want to be trusted either way.
Can I just touch
Yes, my name's Paul. I'm over from the Netherlands, Holland. And what you identified as possibly an opportunity is already happening in Holland. Because I don't know if many of you know Dutch people, but about 70% of our conversation is about how much money we've saved when we bought something. And I can actually spend hours talking to my dad about the various things he's bought cheap. Anyway, it's part of being Dutch is that you absolutely enjoy not spending a lot of money. So this situation that you have here, where is already the Dutch energy market's already open and it's already completed. So I'm sorry, I don't want to insult you or anything. Have you already been to Holland to look at that?
I think I need to go.
So the Dutch energy market is already open and there are competing energy suppliers, and they all basically are constantly bombarding you with ways to save money on your energy. So they advise light bulbs, they advise smart meters, they advise apps that will control your whole everything. They'll even compare. They'll even tell you compare prices. It's all about making the Dutch consumer feel like he's getting the best value for money, and it's a massive. It's an absolute thing.
But have you seen how much money Vattenfall lost last
Well, I
year?
have no idea what's happening.
New energy, you know, the devastation of the traditional utilities in Europe is amazing. We're talking, I mean, the two big German utilities, RWE and E.ON, that used to be, I mean, they were massive. I mean, let's face it, the Germans moved over and they bought half of the old central electricity generating board each, basically, out of the UK. Those people are reporting losses in the order of 4 and 5 billion euros for a trading year. So this isn't something that's unique to WA or Australia even. The energy industry, the traditional electricity utility model internationally is broken.
All the wind farms.
So the reason why we're willing to move into the other sell solar panels and all the way back there and
Leave it up.
Stephanie's chart before showed that utilities around the world are losing money, or our margins are so low. You're on a 2% margin per month. If you can make 5% selling a solar panel and burn less coal and burn less gas, like ultimately in the end, you've got it's the operating margin. It's not your total revenue. It's what's your NPAT at the end, right? So we can, to Stephanie's point, if we lose 600,000 customers, we're dead in the water. If we keep 800,000 customers on a 3% margin, but our total revenue decreases, that's a better situation for us. And so I guess the ultimate view, and one of the big things that the utilities need to get on board with, and why they've lost a lot of money, is what customers want. And if we can't satisfy that, then we're cooked.
I think just before we move on, I think one of the really interesting things that you guys suffer from, and I guess it's what we've just seen with the change of government and the innovation policy, is unless you get that top end support from government, everything below that becomes a political issue for every single person. And so it's that, when we were talking about this last time, and then when we had our meeting, that even doing all of this, you might be able to save $200-300 on average having a smart meter, right, or an interval meter in your home, which most people will go, whatever. But when it comes out, that you put in the your tariff, not the tariff, I'm going to get it wrong, your connection charge up, there's hell to pay. And everyone's like, oh, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think when these sorts of issues become political issues, they're almost stuck in the mud. And I guess that's where the Dutch model is, where the government says, no, we're going to help you save money. The government's helping cannibalise their own market to actually force that innovation back in. And I think that's ultimately what really starts to really drive it in a positive way.
The other little thing that normally happens with these deregulation models, I'm very surprised if it's, actually yes, European markets are deregulated. They're actually not necessarily as deregulated as even as the east coast of Australia on one end. But usually what gets put in place is some sort of retail cap, and that's once again a political decision. And normally it's whatever the tariff of the day was, that's the cap. So people can save money, but you can't pay more. And that's the sort of stuff that goes on it's once again just the forces that are in play in this. It's very, very rarely do you find governments that are prepared to take the hand right off this space. Because of all we ugly, nasty people that are going to rip everyone off.
Okay, so I know everyone's going. So what I wanted to do, because of the time, was that's a really interesting discussion around sort of the retail end. If we can take the conversation back to the first problem, which I like because it's one of those things that come along every now and again, is hot coal and the quality of the coal. Has anyone got any questions around that we can actually start to get some information out of the panellists? Mark?
Well, I don't think it's actually, I don't even know who decided that was going to be the problem, because if you've identified the coal quality as being an issue, but the way things are going and you're heading towards solar and things like that, I don't know why you're even concentrating on that, so as a problem. So eventually, for the time being, we have to deal with coal and things like that, but eventually, more pressing things.
Maybe just get a sense of what the cost of like that.
Yeah.
So right now, we spend, I would say, minimum, what is that, this is fine, a couple $100 million on our coal, and then the assets to maintain another couple $100. So in terms of the quantum of our business, right now, for the next 5 to 10 years, materially more value creative or destructive. And so that sand issue, while we unwind our coal generation over time, is still a big problem for us right now. So PV, for example, 480 panels, it's just the gaps.
And considering you're basically subsidised by us anyway, to the tune of like $300 million a year, right? If you can take 50% or 25% of that cost down, that's the cost that we then, as taxpayers, don't have to put back into it as well.
And don't forget, you're also dealing with a situation in WA where, like it or not, the primary fuel input cost between coal and gas is roughly 3 to 1. So, you are going to be stuck with a transition from what that might be whenever it gets there, where we are today, and how you get from A to B is actually probably with more fun and games than the ultimate problem. So yeah, there's a reasonable chunk of prize there for us.
Anyone else got questions, comments on this one? Down the front.
You've got basically a lot of quality data that you get, because obviously if we don't mine the coal, it's purchased from a coal supplier. But under the terms of that contract, they're obliged to give us a whole pile of quality data. I might add the deliveries are within spec, right? Within what you agree to take. But obviously the better it is, the cheaper it is for us to consume it. So yes, we've got a whole pile of quality data. We've also got increasing the amounts of data on what it means in terms of plant degradation. Because quite frankly, when you put ash through a mill, ash sand through a mill, it's not only the mill that gets warmed, but you end up grip blasting your boiler as well. So it goes right the way through your process. So yeah, there's reasonable chunks of data around to have a fair idea of, we understand what it costs. Perhaps the problem with it is very often if you can't control the source, once it's in your process, it's very difficult to manage it, as we've found. So it's a matter of, how can you blend to get a better average? Because you get peaks and troughs in it too. You might get a really good chunk of coal for a couple of months, and then you get some real rubbish for a couple of months. And the average is okay, but the peak probably really hurt you.
What about how your plant operates, responds to those operating utilities?
Yeah, it's not helpful. I mean, it's the same with wet coal. I mean, you try and burn water, and water doesn't burn very well. Data, operating data.
And it's quite interesting, when you go to the control rooms, the operators can tell you that a load of coal has gone through that is full of sand or full of moisture because of the amount of output they're getting. It's really, and they can say, yep, that's a bad batch, good batch. So it's certainly the most commented on issue every time I go down.
We've got a big pie data historian there that's pulling in real-time data and storing it. We've got lots of data.
The opportunity to end up tracking what can be input because you never have a budget to change the plant itself. So wait for the it's fixed. So then it can be calculated.
I mean, there's even value in knowing it's coming. Yeah, I mean, all ideas are, there's no bad idea until you work out it doesn't work. Look, there's lots of that stuff. It's combustion is one of the hairy ways, because you get, one of the good things is you bought the carbon. The best thing you do is burn it all, because sometimes if your combustion goes bad because of all these other things, you end up with a whole lot of carbon in ash, as we call it, at the bottom of the boiler, which is waste. You've wasted some of the carbon you paid good money for.
All right.
It's relevant to everything.
To everything. It's like Barbo. All right, go quickly, because then we just want to touch on the other problems.
One of the problems and challenges dealing with government and GTE is that you go up to them with a great idea, and they say, that's fantastic, we'll turn it into a scope of works and invite your 5 nearest competitors to bid against you.
That's why you're all sitting here.
So do we have mechanisms to actually come in and provide ideas and then...
I'll touch on that right at the very end.
There you go. All right, so Mr. Dick, right. So smoothing the load curve. Okay, so this is the third problem these kind people have provided us with. This is being able to bring in other data sources as well, being able to predict the weather, if it's going to be sunny, it's obviously we're going to get more PV feeding, those type of things. Anyone got any questions, comments on this for 3 minutes now? Joe?
Synergy, I believe, uses SAP for billing data.
Yep.
Have you guys looked at sort of, you've already got a database there of information of customers' geographical location. Have you looked at any types of, SAP analytics or third-party analytics to mine that existing data store that you have there?
Yes, we have. I think the challenge in the residential space is we don't have interval data yet. So, a lot of you claim if you ever have a look at the meter, some of you will still have the spinning dial meters, and certainly the way the interval meters are read at this point is not half-hourly interval data. So in our large business space, we've got great data, and it's really, really valuable. But what we're struggling with, I guess that kind of cuts across both questions, doesn't it, John, around without kind of better data for our mass market customers, our 900,000 mass market customers, it does actually make it very difficult to predict, apart from the fact that you can make some very broad assumptions around what's going to happen at a certain time of day because consumption profiles generally are more consistent in residential space than they are in a large business space. So I think, you know, the big data question for us is probably comes back to that third question is how do we get that big data in the residential space that allows us to start making these decisions in a way that's cost effective, and we can share it with the customer too.
All right, who hasn't asked a question?
I have a question about the forecast. Is it a problem of big data or a problem of model? I'm a little bit surprised because there's a lot of research in modeling. I don't know which accuracy you are at, but why big data? That would be my question. I'm a little bit surprised there. Is it more the model is not accurate, or is not the right one, or we have to do stacking or something in this direction rather than the data? I'm a little bit confused there about big data and forecasting.
Yeah, you're right. It is both. I think at a system level, it's certainly the modelling, and we, at a system level, we're relatively. We understand what's going to happen on most days, whether dependent peak data or not on peak data. You know, so we're not bad at that. I guess it's when you get down to individual, we don't have that data, and that is an individual customer by customer. So the big challenge we're facing is, while you all have to come to synergy at the moment, it's not a huge problem. When the market opens up, knowing how you use your electricity compared to, say, the chap in the pink shirt here, trying to bend skinny, we can price, the Dutch man said, we can price differently. So we might say, we'll give you a different price, right, but until we've got that data, we just can't do it.
The interesting thing is, the bit we don't know is we can say, well, the weather forecast says it's going to be cloudy tomorrow, so we say, oh, well, okay, that says rooftop PV will probably be down a bit on output. And by the way, it's going to be one of those hot, cloudy, steamy days. The wind isn't blowing much, so the wind farms aren't going to be doing much. Okay, we better schedule some more thermal plant to deal with demand tomorrow. But on those days, what we don't know is how do you as a customer behave. Do you go home and bash your air conditioner really hard because you can't stand humidity? Or, no, I'm cool with this. You know, it's a bit of a humid day. It's not, it's only 32 degrees and I'm cool, you know. So that's the sort of relationships that we just don't have the raw data to work out how you behave in relationship to the weather.
All right, one more question. Sorry.
What's the disparity between the information that you do have, which you've obviously got macro? Western Power has everything at the RTU level. Like, I mean, take Balcata for example. There's a few thousand people, and then you've got retail, which you have the 1,000 people. But what interval do you have those? Because they've got up to the minute, and you've got the generation right back further. What's the disparity in the
You're almost implying a vertically integrated utility of
There might be some issues in there.
What is the disparity between the data that you've got and would getting Western Power's data help?
Probably.
Is that enough? Or?
It's a good question. Where the data is available in interval form, like in the intervals that we're looking for, we do have samples from around the metropolitan area in particular that we're using. I guess the issue around with modelling and forecasting is it's not real time. Western Power will go out and collect that data. They do every second month. And if we want the interval data around that, then it's we have to do special reasons, send someone out with a pro to manually download the data and plug back in the office, and then it's literally on someone's USB and it's plugged into a so without the real time monitoring at the intervals that we use to trade, the data for this type of thing isn't very useful.
It doesn't have to be like that.
Well, yeah, and that's why we're here. Yeah. I think that's what we're opening up to. You're right, it doesn't have to be like that. So what ideas could there be in this room that can help us overcome that?
Well, Lisa, I think you'll find that Western Power actually have substation feeder data. I think that was the number that, yes, they do. They've got it in real time, but will they give it to us? Why give it to Synergy as opposed to another retailer who is out there who is a competitor? That's another problem.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, again, though, substation feeder data is useful, but it's still aggregated. So you can certainly start to identify where you get different peaks across suburbs, and I agree that will still be very, very useful on an aggregate level, but from an individual data or individual data perspective, it's still not as helpful as we would like it to be.
We're going to have to cut it short on that.
All right.
Something.
No. All right. So, can you please put your hands together for the best? So, also, everybody else from Synergy, if you can stand up quickly. Yeah. Right, because these are going to be the people. All right, and wave if you choose. There you go.
We have the good guys in the back there at Langate. So if you
mate, you go for it.
Okay, so that kind of concludes the formal presentation part of this evening. The next part is for you guys to network. We will be sending out an email with a number of different links. So if you think you have a way to solve some of the problems, and it may not have been a problem that was presented today, but you essentially want to get some FaceTime with Synergy, then use this as your opportunity to present it. The link is there, drdisrupt.morningstartup.net. I will send it out tonight to all the people that are on the Morning Startup distribution list. If, for example, you think actually I can help them with the data they need, if I can do real profiles, I can look at roof space, I can look at using geospatial data. The guys at Langate, do you want to put your hands up?
As if I'm cute.
They'll be here to offer you. They're obviously very much involved with data.gov.au. They're kind of like, can I say you're the custodians of it now?
Yeah, we look after data.wa.
That's the one?
But it's part of the data.gov family.
Perfect. So if there's a data set that you want to get hold of, check that place out. If, for example, there's not a data set that you think would help you do your solution, there is a way on the link that I will send you for you to submit a question, which will come through to these lovely guys and girls here, and then they'll get in contact. And obviously in cahoots with what Malcolm Turnbull said this week, the classification of information, if it's not personal, then hopefully these guys will be able to share it with you. The last and final part of tonight is, if you liked what you saw here tonight and you would like to have another corporate come up here in, say, the end of January and February, once a month, we're trying to make this a monthly event. It is a free event. We're all volunteers, all the guys. If you could put your hand up, Sam. Is Nate still here? He's gone. For helping us. Tracy for doing the social part of tonight. It's all voluntary done for the help of WA. Yeah, let us know on the feedback form. The next part is to give Synergy a big round of applause.